I think Bhutan
Hmm.
is too small for that purpose, and
Yeah.
it's too fragile as a state. So I wouldn't call it a buffer state. But yes, I mean, as an approximation, you can use that term. It is simply a tiny kingdom.
You're on the gist on Strat News Global. I'm Surya Gangadharan. Welcome. You're on another edition of the gist. My guest is Pankaj Saran, former Deputy National Security Advisor, and our focus is going to be on Bhutan, where the Prime Minister currently is winding up his visit. Pankaj Saran, welcome.
Thank you, Surya.
Um,
Thank you.
a quick word from you on the import of the Prime Minister's visit to Bhutan. I think this is his fourth visit, or is it his fifth?
It's difficult to keep track, right? Because every prime minister makes it a point to visit Bhutan either at the beginning of his term or
Yeah.
definitely during the course of his term. So yes, I mean,
Mm.
I remember Prime Minister went first to Bhutan in 2014 when he just had become prime minister, 10 years,
Yeah,
11
yeah,
years
his
ago.
first visit.
Yeah,
Mm.
and after that, it's a regular series of visits to Bhutan, but for good reason.
Mhm. For good reason. Okay, let's recapture for our viewers why Bhutan is so important.
Its geography, its history, and its the common culture between the two countries. And both of all these factors weigh very heavily on the relationship. I mean, if I just look at the history, there was a point in time when Bhutan was actually a part of India. And it was only in 1949 that Bhutan got its own independent identity. And at that time, a treaty was signed between Jawaharlal Nehru and the government of Jawaharlal Nehru and the Bhutanese dynasty. So, uh, and that treaty formalized the kind of very unique relationship. It was not a protectorate, but it was certainly lacking in 100% sovereignty as we currently understand it.
Mhm.
And so that formed the basis. And then, after that, for decades, uh, Bhutan remained very central to India's northeast policy in the northeastern region at a time when, for example, Arunachal Pradesh was the northeastern frontier agency, when we had our wars with China. Uh, so, uh, so the history is also, dependent and impacted by geography. Because if you look at Bhutan, it is sandwiched between Tibet and India. Uh, in fact, some of Bhutanese rulers and leadership still refer to Tibet as the northern neighbor, not the
Mhm.
PRC. So you have Tibet, and then on the Bhutan's west, you have the Chumbi Valley, which is the tri-junction between India, China, the PRC, and Bhutan. And on the east, you have another tri-junction between India, China, and Bhutan. And Bhutan straddles or looks down upon the Siliguri corridor,
Yeah.
um, and it's actually the gateway also to the northeast, to Assam, to West Bengal,
Mhm.
and that whole area. So, and in the early 2000s, late 90s, some of the Indian insurgents took shelter in Bhutan. They used to take shelter in Bangladesh, but then they also the Ulfa, and they set up camps in Bhutan
Yeah.
in the thick
Yeah.
forests. So it's a and then so therefore Bhutan is critical from a strategic point of view, from the point of view of your border management with China. Remember that the Bhutan-China boundary has not yet been settled.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so the fact that you share two trijunctions, both of which even today are unsettled, and
Yeah.
there is a dispute over the exact location of the trijunction between India, China, and Bhutan, makes Bhutan critical for India's broader regional strategy. So these are the reasons, and of course, the cultural reasons are very important because in Bhutan, Buddhism and the Vajrayana school of Buddhism and the Tibetan form of Buddhism or the school of Buddhism practiced in Bhutan, they want to differentiate themselves from the northern part of Tibet, and
Mhm.
they find that more of a threat than their southern neighbor, which is India. So uh, they want to protect their cultural identity against this huge swath of territory on the north, and which is
Mhm.
where they find India to be a very comforting neighbor. And historically, a lot of Bhutanese royalty officials, students have chosen to actually study either school or college or both in India, in the Northeast, in Shillong, in Delhi. So the educated elite, till some time ago, that is changing now, of course,
Yeah.
used to study in India and then go back and participate in the governance and so on of the country. So
Mhm.
these are the reasons, and of course we can discuss other aspects of why Bhutan has become important. I mean, the other factor which makes Bhutan attractive as a partner is its hydropower potential.
Yeah.
Um, there are estimates that its capacity is close to 30, 40,000 megawatts.
Mm.
Um, so, so I would say these are the reasons.
Mhm. Would you say that in that sense, Bhutan is a kind of a buffer state? Nepal is also a buffer state. I mean, are these, does that concept still have, weight?
Well, a buffer state, not really, because a buffer state implies that the state in question has the capacity to withstand and to kind of function as a like a cushion between two big powers. I think
Hmm.
Bhutan is too small for that purpose, and
Yeah.
it's too fragile as a state. So I wouldn't call it a buffer state, but yes, I mean, as an approximation, you can use that term. It is simply a tiny kingdom, uh, you know, nestled between um,
Two
China and
giant.
Tibet, two giant neighbors.
Mm,
And so it's incumbent on us to respect its sovereignty, its identity, its cultural uniqueness,
mhm.
um, and and of course, because it is so strategically located, as I just mentioned, it has its importance for India.
Yeah, yeah. I'll just come to that in a bit. I want to look at this economic dependence, much of its budget comes from here. Much of the power that it sells comes here. I mean, there's an overwhelming dependence on India. Does that occasion resentment? We've seen it in Nepal. That kind of. Is this coming up in Bhutan also?
I'm told that among the younger generation and among certain sections, remember the Bhutanese population, when you talk of Bhutan, is
Yeah.
like less than a million, right? So their estimates vary between 600,000 to 700,000 people. So it's very sparsely populated. And
Hmm.
the elites are also even that much smaller. So when you
Yeah.
talk of the resentment or the public opinion, remember the public is very small. I mean, it's not like millions of people. So you
Yeah.
have to be very careful when you navigate your path in that relationship. But
Mhm.
yes, there is a section which feels that there is overdependence on India, that you must or should diversify your external linkages. But that is easier said than done because they are
Hmm.
also wary of how much to diversify because even today they have very few diplomatic relations with very few countries,
Yeah.
hardly any embassies based resident in Thimphu. Almost all the non-resident embassies are located in Delhi.
Mm.
Um, so some of the overdependence is inevitable because of geography, whether it comes to trade or transit through India for Bhutanese exports to third countries or for Bhutanese imports from third countries via India. So there is that dependence. And so India has, look, a lot of these arrangements, legal bilateral arrangements, at the end of the day, as we are discovering as we go along, are a function of the nature of the political relationship you have. So if you have a
Yeah.
good political relationship, the sky's the limit. You can
Mm.
do what you want. India, you can have the best possible arrangements. But if the political relations are frayed, then even the simplest things become very difficult. So
Mm.
there is dependence, there is concern, there is maybe resentment. But on the other hand, the reality also is that India is never dictating this form of cooperation. A lot of it
Mm.
is coming out of choice, but also a political choice of the Bhutanese leadership that they, totally unlike the Nepalese case, which is a stark contrast to Nepal, here
Mm.
the Bhutanese leadership has voluntarily chosen to leverage their hydro potential and convert it into a huge earner, foreign exchange earner, and a revenue earner for itself. And this model has worked very well so far. So what has so just to go a little deeper into the question, in the first few projects, hydro projects, India funded the entire project, 100% ownership. Over
Mm.
time, the Bhutanese said, no, we don't like this. We need to have a share because, it's a question of sovereignty. So then they started putting money on the table. So they started sharing the equity, but they didn't have enough equity. So India then provided the equity in the form
Mm.
of a loan or a grant and said, okay, this is your equity. And India would bring its own share of finance. So it would be
Mm.
jointly developed. And that was the model. Now that model is also changing even further in the
Okay.
sense that now Indian private sector companies are now
Mm.
coming in, putting in their own money. And this model has worked because we get the electricity, Bhutan gets the revenue and earns
Mm.
from it. Um, and uh, and this has worked pretty well. I mean, the question then, of course, becomes, how much does Bhutan earn?
Yeah.
And
Mm.
a lot of the discussions between India and Bhutan have related in the past to
Mm.
fixing the tariff of the electricity which is
Mm.
imported into India, and whether there is elasticity in that tariff over a 20,
Mm.
30 year period so that the revenues are not stagnant for
Yeah.
Bhutan, but they grow over time. And then there are very detailed and very intricate calculations that go into, for example, the life cycle cost of a hydro station. So it's a very complex, and so far both countries and their experts have managed to discuss all this quite well.
Mhm. Does has this given a this dependence has it given a push for voices suggesting that they need to open up to China sooner rather than later?
Yes, yes. I mean, there is. I mean, there is a generational shift where
Mhm.
people, and China is trying extremely hard, very, very hard, to prize open Bhutan.
Mhm.
Uh, Not just the market, but the polity and the society.
Mhm.
Um, if they overplay their hands, uh, they will they will burn their fingers. But they
Yeah.
are trying very hard. But yes, there is definitely a section which wants to open up to China, and Chinese presence has grown. I mean, uh, it's a fact over the you know, last many years, it has grown.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The, that the Chinese profile in Bhutan. Okay, let me hold that question. Let me go back to 2007 when India and Bhutan signed an agreement where we would no longer guide them in their conduct of foreign policy. How would you say that has affected our bilateral relationship?
I don't think it has affected the bilateral relationship because that article which you refer to is Article 2 of the 1949 treaty.
Yeah.
And that the 49 treaty itself had a history because, as I said, prior to 49, Bhutan was not even recognized as an independent nation or
Yeah.
independent country. So the Article 2 had a two-part component. The first was that India undertook not to interfere in the internal affairs of Bhutan. And
Hmm.
in return, Bhutan said, we will be guided by, so it was like a partial sovereignty
Hmm.
status. In 2007, the same treaty was revised or updated. Now, the fact that Bhutan agreed to even have a treaty relationship with India
Yeah.
is very interesting and suggests that it is comfortable with the idea that it'll have a treaty of friendship with India. And so
Hmm.
the 2007 language is different. It gives more respect to, to Bhutan, but it
Hmm.
also says that the two countries will continue to cooperate on issues of national interest. It talks
Hmm.
about the importance of national security of each other and so on. So if you look at the history of the relationships in 2007 till today, in the last 18 years,
Hmm.
what you actually see is intensification of the economic cooperation, of the energy cooperation, of the trade relationship, of the particularly of the connectivities,
Hmm.
whether it is rail or road or energy. So all of this has grown, and at the same time, you haven't found Bhutan opening up radically to the detriment of India. So
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
have kept Indian concerns and sensitivities in mind, not just because of India, but also because of their own vulnerability as a society, which is small and fragile. So I think the treaty, in some ways, has actually helped and to evolve the relationship rather than be stuck in 1949.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
this is
Hmm.
a good example for any two countries in the world where you upgrade the legal framework by which you conduct your relationship. So, for example, in the case of Nepal, you know that the 1950 treaty is a subject of constant commentary in
Yeah.
Nepal, political
Hmm.
and otherwise. But in the case of Bhutan, the noise level was much less
Hmm.
about the 1949 treaty. But then, because of the relationship and the track record and the trust, very important, you see, trust, and that is critical. The Indian side and the Bhutanese side got together and updated. And so, what do we see in retrospect, in hindsight, in the post 2007 period? What we
Hmm.
see is that the treaty has, in a sense, facilitated the modernization of the relationship.
Hmm. 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 What about, would you say this relationship is also driven because has stayed largely stable because you have a monarchy there that is committed to it?
Oh, yes. I mean, we've dealt with monarchies in Nepal and monarchies in
Yeah,
Bhutan, and the track record is completely different, completely
yeah,
different.
yeah.
So the monarchy in Bhutan, particularly the Wangchuk dynasty, um, has played a huge role in guiding the relationship. They're
Hmm.
also very conscious of protecting Bhutanese interests. Uh, they are no pushovers in terms of defending Bhutan's interests.
Hmm.
But they also have had consistently a very enlightened understanding of the importance of India to their own prosperity, but more importantly, to their own internal stability.
Hmm.
And so, yes, I mean, the fourth king, whose 70th anniversary, birth anniversary, has just been celebrated. and his son, the fifth king, the current king, both of them have actually displayed a surprisingly uniform understanding and commitment to the relationship. So they have a very small parliament. They have a prime minister who also does the day-to-day governance. The current
Yeah.
prime minister is also well disposed. So it's a unique relationship. We should treasure it, not take it for granted, um, and recognize that the friendship flows from the top. It sends its signals right down to the lowest level,
Mhm.
uh, and they're very well educated. It's a highly educated bureaucracy, leadership, the ministers. They're all very high quality. Um, so yeah, I mean, absolutely, the monarchy's role in the development of the. But I would say that the Indian political class has been equally responsive,
Sensitive,
uh,
yeah.
regardless of the government in power in Delhi or in the
Mm.
states neighboring Bhutan. Everyone has played their part uh, in nurturing the relationship.
Mhm. Let's look at the Bhutan China relationship. Officially, they don't have one, there are no embassies there. Yet, China is the elephant in the room. It's a huge factor in Bhutan's foreign policy, isn't it?
Yeah, they don't have diplomatic ties, they don't have embassies, but they've had many rounds of border talks
Yeah.
between each other. Um, they also have had in the last few years visits to each other's countries. They have had diplomatic visits. They've also had other non-diplomatic exchanges,
Mhm.
social, cultural, but few and far between. Um, so Bhutan has to decide what kind of a relationship it wants with China. It is easy to say that India is standing in the way, which is what the Chinese accuse
Yeah.
the Bhutanese and they accuse us of.
Mhm.
But Bhutan has its own agency, and China should not make the mistake of projecting Bhutan or its leadership as being someone without its own independent mind and thinking. Um, the fact is that India and China have had a border problem, have fought
Yeah.
wars in the vicinity of Bhutan, both on the Doklam, on Chumbi Valley, Arunachal. These are all facts. So
Yeah.
naturally, we are very sensitive and alert to Chinese military presence and strategy in that neighborhood, in that vicinity, and so are the Bhutanese. So they welcome Indian military cooperation to safeguard their territorial integrity and their borders. Um, uh, and that's how it has been so far. And um, by far, India is the dominant, preeminent international partner of Bhutan. There is no one close to us.
Mhm. The territorial demands that China is making on Bhutan, um, are the Bhutanese, I'm told, are they halfway there to resolving it? I mean, what's the update?
I don't know the latest situation. I'm out of it. But yes, I know that they've had, I don't know, maybe more than 20 rounds of talks on the boundary. They've kind of also developed a framework or a pathway forward
Mhm.
to resolve. Um, but what I know is that the Chinese have made some extraordinary demands
Hmm.
on Bhutanese territory, both in the Chumbi Valley area and in the north. And interestingly enough, in 2020, for the first time, they objected to a loan for Bhutan in the Sakteng Wildlife Sanctuary, which is on the east.
Uh-huh.
So it's like typical expansionist, tendencies, which we are aware of from the Chinese. So uh, so this is a complex negotiation. We are a party to it, a legitimate
Mhm.
legal party, because there is a
Mhm.
tri-junction. Because in the Chumbi Valley area, there are three countries who are involved
Yeah.
in it: India, China, and Bhutan. So it's not as if we don't have a locus standi. Um, so I know that there are discussions going on the alignment. Uh, the Chinese attempt is to push down on the valley, to
Hmm.
deepen it, and to widen it.
The Chumbi Valley, they want to
The
deepen
Chumbi
and widen.
Valley. Yeah, it's a triangle. It's like this. So
Yeah,
they want
yeah.
to take the triangle lower, closer to the
Mm.
Siliguri corridor. They also want to widen it so that
Okay.
the section in between is Tibet, is Chinese territory.
Yeah.
And on the north, on the Bhutan-China, they have about uh, slightly less than a 500-kilometer border with China. Uh,
Hmm.
so there also there are pockets or patches under discussion and negotiation, and of course, as I said, on the east. So I mean, Bhutan has to decide. I mean, which way. But the Bhutanese are aware of our security concerns, and so far they have respected those concerns.
Hmm. How would you describe the Chinese effort to make inroads into Bhutan? Is it kind of in constant incremental nibbling at their territory, diplomatic pressures, a little bit of intimidation here and there?
It's a bit of everything that you said, but it's also
Mm.
inducements because they have deep pockets.
Yeah.
Uh, but the issue is not so much of dollars and cents and how much money you can pump into an economy like Bhutan, but it's also very at the very essential level. It's the cultural identity, as I said.
Yeah. Mm.
I mean, between Tibet and Bhutan, they're both Buddhist. They both practice the Tibetan form of Buddhism. There
Yeah.
is a serious identity issue involved out here.
Hmm.
Uh, the J Kempo in Bhutan is the custodian of the Buddhist faith, and the Bhutanese regard. I mean, the fact that uh, Guru Padmasambhava came all the way and set up Buddhism and so on. So this is all very much at the back of everyone's mind in Bhutan when you open up as you do. And so uh, it depends on the state of the India China relationship also,
Mm.
how China approaches whether it is using inducements, whether it is using threat, or whether it is nibbling away at Bhutanese territory. Uh, in fact, all of this came together in Doklam in 2017.
Yeah.
So, um, so this is so it's a complex play of factors. Um, but I would say, um, despite all of this, the India-Bhutan relationship has moved progressively and steadily, um, and which is why the relationship is monitored and led by not by bureaucrats in India, but by the political leadership of India.
Yeah.
And in fact, I would go even further to say by the Prime Minister himself and his office, and in the MEA at the highest levels, because
Hmm.
of all these sensitivities.
So, last question: would you say Doklam was a indication to the Chinese how far India could go in the defense of Bhutan, in securing Bhutan?
I think so. I think so. I mean, there is no question that Doklam was as close as you can get to a military conflict which was only written about or spoken about or thought of. But you actually then had this action on the ground where the
Yeah.
Indian and Chinese forces uh, were facing each other. So, and the Bhutanese were kind of, in a sense, caught in between.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mm.
but At that time, uh, and as has been the understanding between India and Bhutan, that India would stand by and come to the rescue of Bhutan, and vice versa, that Bhutan itself would also play its part in cooperating and in upholding India's core vital national security interests. So it is a two-way street, uh, and that's basically the understanding, and that's the basis for the political trust between the two countries.
Looking ahead, you see anything that could disturb this? I mean,
Well, I mean, we have to just watch how the Bhutan boundary negotiations take place with China,
mhm.
how the overall relationship in terms of establishment of diplomatic relations takes place between
Yeah,
Bhutan and China. And we'll also have to watch to some extent how Bhutan opens up or does not open up, or at what speed it opens up to other P5, like the United States.
yeah,
Uh, but they are definitely more comfortable with other regional countries like, say, Japan, Singapore,
mm,
um, maybe to some extent Australia, uh, some of the Nordics, some of the Europeans, whom they find less threatening. But what
mm.
my understanding is that Bhutan does not really want to get caught in
In
global
this,
geopolitics. That's
yeah,
that's my and the monarchy is hesitant to get caught because they've seen so many bad cases around them of people of countries getting sucked into this geopolitical conflicts,
yeah.
which actually just do nothing but damage and harm smaller countries.
Mm. On
But
that
we have
note,
to,
Professor,
but we
yeah,
have to, yeah, but we have to be sensitive to Bhutan. We have to, even on the economic, on the hydro, on other things, don't take anything for granted. No
yeah, mm,
relationship can be taken for granted. You have to nurture, you have to respect, and as Bhutan grows richer, which it is growing, its expectations from India will also change.
we go, yeah,
So don't also constantly understand as an Indian, also innovate and adapt to changing realities. You can't be stuck in time. As we showed,
mm,
the best example is 2007. I don't think there are many other cases in the world where two countries have amicably decided to update and revise a treaty and yet remain in a treaty relationship. That's an
yeah,
extraordinary example of Indian statesmanship and Bhutanese statesmanship. So I would say for the future, looking ahead, adapt, innovate, don't be stuck in time, and learn to change as things go. India is also changing. Bhutan is
yeah.
also. So that's what I would say.
Mm. On that note, Pankaj Saran, thanks very much. As always, a lot of insight there. And let's see what further comes out of the Bhutan visit of the PM. Thanks very much. Glad for
Thank
your
you.
time.
Thank you very much, Surya. Pleasure.
That's all we have for you on this broadcast. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on social media. Thank you very much.